Welcome to the Principal Podcast, where we talk about how the best professional services firms grow. Whether you're looking to scale your firm or learn from the stories of founders and leaders who've done it, you're in the right place. Join us as we interview the best leaders in professional services. Let's get on with the show.
Welcome to Consulting Leaders Podcast, a place where we talk about the business of consulting. Whether you're looking to grow your own practice or learn from the stories of leaders in consulting, you're in the right place. I'm your host, John Degnan. Join me as we talk with the best consultants in their niche. Today, we have another great consultant, Robin Waite, known as the pricing guy, helps coaches and consultants solve one of the most overlooked constraints in their business, pricing and capacity. In this episode, we'll break down how to charge more confidently, stabilize cash flow, and build a business that doesn't rely on constant hustle. Welcome, Robin.
Hey, John, it's a real pleasure, actually. I was quite humbled when I got the invitation to join you on the podcast. So, yeah, real pleasure to be here.
Nice of you to say. I see your t-shirt says fearless, and you're the fearless business coach. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a bit of a happy accident, actually. So I'll give you the very pre-seed version of it. But I ran a marketing agency for 12 years, sold that in 2016, and then fell into coaching. Essentially what happens is when you go to a networking meeting after you've sold a business and people say, what do you do? And you tell them nothing, they get very curious very quickly. So then I just kind of say, well, I sold a business, and they'd bribe me with coffee and cake. I'll pretty much do anything for coffee and cake these days. And they wanted to pick my brains and figure out how they could grow their businesses. So I started sort of coaching officially back in 2017. And then where Fearless came from, I noticed that a lot of the business owners that I was working with just had these really kind of seemingly small things, but they were making them very big, and it was stopping them from, making progress with their business. There was fear around failure, or fear around an idea not working out, or fear of judgment of others. These fears which they were kind of facing, which if they just took one small step, closer away from that fear and closer to their goal, they had a far greater chance of achieving their goals. So it became fearless. Fear the things in business and life ever so slightly less that are holding you back and stopping you from achieving those goals. And it's kind of stuck now.
So what made you transition from selling your business to being a consultant?
It was so the agency was great. I mean, it was a good little local business. We got to about $300,000 a year revenue. I had a small team of people. But kind of as I was coming towards the end of my shift with that agency, so I've been doing it for 12 years, I was between daughters. So my second daughter was about to be born. And at that time, obviously, I didn't know what I know now about running a business. And I was still pulling a lot of all-nighters. We had clients kind of getting in touch with us late at night and at weekends. And we had a few, typical sort of agency challenges. And the prospect of baby number 2 coming along and all of this I found just very overwhelming. I just wanted to spend some time with my family and not have these pressures of running this business. And I guess at the time, the only way that I could see of overcoming this challenge was basically just to close it down. So initially I was out with my cycling buddies on a Sunday morning. I went down this hill at 52.5 miles an hour. And then I just had this emotional breakdown at the bottom of the hill. I just broke down in floods of tears. My cycling buddies were like, crikey, okay, Rob? And I said, well, clearly not, but don't worry, go back to the cafe, line me up with some coffee and cake. You'll see there's a theme here. And I'll catch up with you in a bit. But just in that moment of then just, slowly making my way back to the cafe to go and catch up with my mates, I realized that just agency life wasn't filling me up. It was served a purpose. We made good money, but I really wasn't happy with the way that it was being run. So my wife's 8 months pregnant at this point. So I go home and I'm like, darling, I've got some good news and some bad news. She's like, oh, what's the good news? I said, well, I've finally made a decision about the business. She said, well, what's the bad news? I'm going to close it down. Like the international sign of distress went out and lots of, swear words. But actually it turned out to be the best decision I've ever made. It's a hard decision, but the best decision. And the process of closing it down, obviously word spread. So somebody very kindly, generously came in and said, look, you've got some IP here that we want. And that IP actually is the basis for what I teach a lot of people now around productizing services and pricing. And also we had about 120 clients. They bought our client book and a bit of IP. I had an earn out over 2 years. And honestly, the next sort of few months was just bliss, because I didn't have to worry about the business, got to hang out with my family, and really kind of think about what my next steps were going to be. And then, like I said in the intro, fell into coaching as a complete accident. Just having those informal mentoring conversations with people about their businesses and hearing that, well, for one, my business journey wasn't new or exceptional or different. There were lots of businesses struggling with these same things, but seeing it from that outside perspective, looking into their businesses, I was able to start to pick apart the things which I'd realized that I was doing well to get to sort of a reasonable sort of exit figure with my business.
What makes coaching so fulfilling for you?
So I've worked with, at the start, I kind of had some big corporate clients. I had a lot of smaller sort of similar businesses, same as mine, and one-person businesses. I get to work with the most incredible business owners. So I kind of gravitated away from corporate because whilst I felt I was doing some good work, I couldn't directly see the results of the work that I was doing. It would take months, if not years, for there to be this trickle-down effect through the organisation and to see the impact, whether it be financially or with the people there. But with the small business owners, the sort of the freelancers I was working with, the small agencies, graphic designers, coaches, those sorts of businesses, one-person businesses, you make a change to their pricing model or to a way that they're marketing their business or a shift in their mindset, you can see immediately like what the results are there, and an immediate impact in revenue growth or in their confidence, or being able to make decisions like I was able to. Having a second baby when you're struggling to keep an agency sort of going is a really scary place to be, but now I'm able to kind of support people to make those really important life decisions without having to fear kind of the consequences of whatever their decisions are. So, and you can see it directly. It's like feet on the ground. I can, when they have babies, when they move house, when they get their first office, when they get that first sort of higher ticket client on board, you can see like the difference it's making with their life.
The pricing guy, how'd you get that name?
Well, over the last 9 years since I doubled down on coaching, my thing has become pricing and money mindset. And there's a couple of, I don't know if you're familiar with, there's a mentalist called Darren Brown. So he does like live on stage. He kind of, I suppose, reads people's body language and mind. And I've realized that pricing, a lot of people put down to it just being an intellectual decision. I'll do some calculations in a Google sheet and then it will spit out a number that I should be charging. But oftentimes, people don't realize that pricing is actually far more an emotional decision. It's a heart-based decision. And we know this because it's cliched, but not everybody can explain it. But, most people make a buying decision based on their emotions. And pricing is very acutely linked to that sort of emotional state. So we try and solve it emotionally. But I started to realize, again, because I was sort of harking back to my agency days when I always had this feeling of like, I feel like I'm undercharging. I feel like I'm underselling myself. And I feel like I'm worth more than this. And then when I got the outside perspective and seeing people tell me their prices and their body language like be really down and like they knew that they were underselling themselves, I was like, well, you're worth more than that, aren't you? And so I've developed over the last few years several kind of techniques to be able to figure out, separate head from the heart and figure out heartfelt, like how much somebody should be charging. And get them very in tune and aligned with that when they get to the point of then having to pitch that new offer to their prospects.
It's interesting because you talk about psychology and systems, but also I read in your website that you're very interested in creativity and analytics. So how do they go together in your book?
So we make reasonable assumptions, don't we, with the left-hand side of the brain, the analytical side of the brain, and those assumptions can work for many bright people. You've got likes of Elon Musk, who is smart enough to be able to put, how many 10,000 Starlink satellites up into space, which blows my mind. But there's also the other side of it, the creative side of it, where you look at Elon's vision with his products, the Tesla products, or the spaceships, the huge, great big spaceship, which they're now trialing and launching and things like that. And you're like, how do you even start to come up with the idea for that? So the left-hand brain is very good at problem solving, but it's also very good at talking us out of, making illogical decisions. It's like the logic side of it. But in order for like really creative, cool ideas to come to fruition, and even you might look at something like an accountancy practice or a graphic design business or something like that and go, well, you don't really need much right brain thinking for that. Well, no, you have to be able to envisage what that business looks like in the future. That's very right brain creative thinking in order to see how you fit into that picture.
What specific problem are you solving for your clients when it comes to pricing and capacity?
Yeah, so the main issue around capacity, especially for small business owners, is that when you start something like a consulting business, you assume that, well, let's say we're charging $50 an hour for our services or $100 an hour. You work out your financial projections based on the typical 40-hour work week, right? So we'll take 40 hours, we'll multiply it by $100, we'll multiply that by 4.2 weeks a month. And we go, right, that's how much money I can earn. But what a lot of small business owners neglect to sort of include in that calculation is the fact that we've got to do our finance and accounts, our admin, we've got to do some marketing activities, we've got to do some sales meetings. We've probably got to take the dog to the vet. We've probably got to drop our kids off and pick them up from school, and everything at holidays and you name it, everything else which comes into it. So the typical sort of consultant or coach or freelancer only has about 2 days worth of billable hours available to them in any typical week. Irrespective of whether they can sell more, that's typically what they end up being able to deliver. And so naturally what that does is it creates this cap on your earnings potential. Now, I know your question was about capacity. So how capacity links to that is just they have limited amounts of capacity to be able to deliver a full and remarkable solution to their customers. So we have to reshift like how we see and use our capacity as small business owners. And so one way to change that is rather than selling your time as a value, instead think about selling the results and outcomes to the clients, because ultimately they don't pay for your time. So as a consultant, let's say you build websites. It doesn't matter whether it takes you an hour or 100 hours to build a website. What the customer wants is a working website that's going to get them customers. And so is it fair that whether it takes an hour or 100 hours, that $5,000 is $5,000 is a fair price to pay for a working website that brings leads into it? The other thing as well is that what happens is more experienced consultants end up getting penalized because of their experience. So as they get better at doing the job through, over 20 years, they can get faster at it. They get more skilled. They invest into their education around their topic, and they can produce those results faster than somebody who's starting out, who's maybe still learning the ropes, does a bit of a bodge job of the work, and it takes them twice as long. Why should the person who's more experienced get penalized for doing the job better and faster? So these are all clues that basically hourly rate, time-related, capacity-based pricing is a flawed business model ultimately. And so what we do is I start to get people to look at, okay, when we've shifted away from hourly rates, well, let's look at what the optimal business looks like, and we do something called goal-focused pricing instead. So let's say hypothetically this consultant wants to get to a point where they're earning $100,000. 100K probably isn't much money these days, is it? I think 200K is the new 100K, but keep the numbers simple. Let's say they want to earn 100K, and they're the moment they're selling their widgets, websites or whatever for $1,000. So we take the big number, divide it by the little number. So 100K divided by 1K, and that means we've got to deliver 100 websites this year. And that's the point when a lot of small business owners' eyes pop out of their head, because all of a sudden they're like, well, I couldn't possibly deliver 100 websites this year. That's just ridiculous. And then you have the second question, which is around, can I actually find enough clients to sell 100 websites to? And they're like, well, no, I couldn't possibly find 100 clients. So we're starting to get this idea that, well, we set our capacity around 100 units, but actually that's wildly inaccurate. It doesn't work for this business model. And then you go, okay, so how many clients could you find, attract and enroll and work with? And they might go, well, 20 clients, that feels more realistic. Okay, great. So we take 100K. It's no rocket science here. It's simple. We take our 100K, we divide it by 20. And now what we've got to figure out is how do we attract and enroll clients who are willing to spend 5K on our websites? Do we need to, we don't just 5X our, sometimes you can, but we don't just 5X our prices generally with no extra value. What we do is we go, what additional value can I stack into that 5K website that delivers a full and remarkable solution to our customers so that, they refer us, we get them great results, and we can build a great business together.
Who are your ideal clients?
My ideal clients typically are coaches, consultants, or freelancers. So any service client business owner that is charging currently time for money or selling low ticket, my job is to basically help them shift how they see the value which they're delivering based on results and outcomes, and then confidently charge more.
Okay. And how do you attract the right clients today? And what's been most effective that others can learn from?
Yeah, great question. So 2022, I became antisocial, basically. I just quit social media. I was so fed up with it. Like, I know it works for some people, but for me, I just couldn't get it to a point where it felt like such a heavy lift in, but the results just weren't tantamount to the amount of work we were doing. I mean, we were doing short and long form content, video, all the social medias, email marketing, you name it, we were doing everything. And I could easily quantify it to like 30, 40 hours a week between me and my team that we were kind of loading into the machine, and just the results. I mean, it's good. I've got a successful business, but just the effort didn't seem quite equal to the output. So I basically, end of 2022, I was like, I'm done with social. I just can't see myself doing this content marketing thing anymore. But of course, I've got to market. I've got to do something different. So 2023, I pivoted towards partnerships. So I'd observed a couple of my friends who were doing really well in the coaching space. And I started to realize partnerships was a really great way to grow an audience. And, trying to leverage other people's audiences effectively. So it culminated, I'll give the sort of pre-seed version just for expediency of time, but it culminated with me getting picked as a guest on Ali Abdaal's Deep Dive podcast. So he's a YouTuber. He's got something like 7 million subscribers now. So I guessed on his podcast, and I knew it was going to be a big deal. I knew we were going to get some feedback. And it transpired that over the next 12 months, we got 3,000 leads coming through into my small practice.
Wow.
And that translated into £300,000 worth of new business. So new clients coming through. So it's about $400,000 worth of new business just from one single podcast. So now my strategy is primarily find podcast hosts who've got decent sized audiences where we've got a nice overlap in terms of content and audience, and we complement each other well. I spend a lot of time nurturing those relationships. So it's not just hey, rock up and guest on the podcast. I spent probably maybe a couple of years before I got interviewed with Ali, just working with his team, helping them with a couple of product launches. I didn't charge them for any of that. It was just about pay into the system, add as much value as I possibly can do. It helped that I loved his channel and his values and his mission, and everything. There was a lot of alignment there. And then as a thank you, they invited me onto the podcast, and I've since been able to repeat this with a number of sort of influencers, and these are quite niche people, so you may not have heard of them, but Chris Do, who's in the creative space, he's got 2.5 million subscribers. I've done some work with Nisha, who's a finance educator. She's got, again, 2 million subscribers. Daniel Priestley, who's now been on Diary of a CEO 8 times or something like that. Simon Squibb, who's got 17 million followers. So I've just worked over the past sort of 3 years now to develop relationships with influential people who already have large audiences, added as much value as I can, supported their mission, and just got stuck in. And slowly these opportunities start to pay down. You will see me do a bit of content, but really it's for fun when I get to do it and just play around with it. I like my content strategy is simple: speak on the stage at events, guest on podcasts, and give away as many books as I possibly can do, basically.
That's great. That's very smart. That's very smart. I haven't heard that. Strategically partnering with podcasts that are highly influencers. That's terrific. Do you host your own podcast as well?
Yeah, so it's on pause at the moment. So I've got a podcast called the Fearless Business Podcast. We've got recorded about 150 episodes. About 2/3 of those were guest episodes. Interestingly, I found it's a bit of a useful experiment, because I found that despite there being fewer monologue, like solo episodes, my solo episodes typically get about 4 times as many downloads as my guest interviews. So that was an interesting experiment. So it's been on pause for about 18 months, because in this sort of hiatus of content, stepping away from that content machine, I've been trying to figure out, I want to relaunch it, but I had to figure out what I was going to do. So We're about to relaunch it under the guise of something called the Business Bench, where I will literally a park bench, picnic bench, garden bench. I'll sit down with the business owner and I will coach them through like a specific pain point, problem or challenge which they're experiencing. So we're shifting from online to in-person. We're going high production value, which is why I've got this rig set up, because we're testing at the moment, training somebody up on the podcast, on the video side of things. Awesome. And then, we're launching it back out on YouTube and as a podcast, hopefully in the next sort of 2 to 3 months.
When selling higher priced services, what do you do differently in your sales process to close without discounting?
So the main thing is like, as an example, I always kind of position it this way. So it's quite typical for therapists, for example, to offer a bulk load of sessions in order to attract a client in, but they offer the bulk of sessions for a discount. And I'll always challenge them. I'll be like, well, if a client comes in for one session or a block of 12, do they not get better results for the 12? And they're always like, yeah, of course they get better results. I'm like, well, why do they pay less then? Like, if anything, they should be paying more for that block. So again, the other challenge around discounting as well is discounting can really erode profitability. So there's a common misconception that if you discount by, say, 10%, you've only got to attract and enroll 10% more clients or sell 10% more of the same product to make up the net profit. It doesn't work like that, because by the time the money is trickled down through the profit and loss account, there's this compounding effect which happens. So if you discount by just 10%, you've probably got to sell about 22% more of the same product to make the same net profit. By the time you've got to about a 20 to 25% discount, you've actually got to sell double in order to make the same net profit you were making previously. So imagine working twice as hard to make the same net profit. It just erodes like the bottom line really badly. And conversely, it works in the opposite way. So if you raise your prices by 10%, you can, let's say you had $1 million business that was only doing a 10% net profit margin, like 100K. If you raised your prices by just 10% and there's no extra cost or expense, you've just doubled your profit in one move. And they always say, don't they? I know it's very cliched, but they always say, turnover is vanity, profit is sanity, but cash is king. So again, that leads me to the final point on this, that, what happens is that if you discount, you end up with less cash. It's a really simple equation, but cash flow is the lifeblood. It's like the oxygen of the business. So if you do anything to hurt cash flow in the business, it's going to have a long-term negative impact. So again, what we want to do is we don't discount, we elevate our value and stack higher perceived value to back up our price. Then also what we do is we invite people to pay up front. So not all of it. It might be that we take 50% up front. Even as a consultant, there's many people can do this. It's about negotiating that sort of relationship with your customers who you're supplying. But if you can start to get 25% in advance, 50% in advance, and generally for most consulting gigs, there's work required up front anyway, so it kind of justifies that advance payment. You're starting to create these really positive cash flow cycles within your business.
Okay. And where do you find yourself most stuck right now in your business, if at all?
Well, I'll be very honest. I have one very specific problem at the moment, John, and that is my dream is to guest on Diary of a CEO. I've had several peers be guests on there, and I can see myself being, getting to that position where I can get on his podcast. But there are some things which I agree with and disagree with about what Stephen Bartlett is about, but you have to, it's a great opportunity to kind of, get an immediate sort of boost in terms of personal profile and personal brand, guesting on a podcast like that. But obviously opening the doors for something like that can take 2, 3, 4 years, in order to come to fruition. So that's the one specific problem I've got. So if you know anybody on Steve Bartlett's team, hit me up, John.
Okay. We'll put the word out. We'll put the word out for you.
Thank you.
Finally, looking ahead, where do you see the biggest opportunity for your work in pricing and productization over the next few years?
The biggest opportunity isn't really for me. It's for the clients I get to work with. There are so many. We're going through a cost of living crisis here, and my goal, my passion is, like I said right at the start, is to see people not. I really struggled in my first sort of 4 or 5 years of running my agency. And I've kind of on this personal mission that I want to shortcut the process so that people can bypass that struggle and get to a point of like financial security within their business. My goal when I work with a client is to, I've already achieved this for myself. I've hit my number, but to get to a point where they've got a cash buffer that will keep them afloat for 6 to 12 months without them needing to enroll another single client. So they're not there having to constantly chase clients, like sell, deliver. They can take their time to attract and qualify and bring in the right clients that they get real joy from working with, that also they get paid well for. So like I said, for me, there's no benefit to me. I kind of hit my numbers and I have a successful practice, but it's for all those people who are starting out or in the early stages of their journey. I just want them to get to that place in their business, not necessarily personally, but a place in their business where they feel financially secure.
Sure. If people want to find out more about you and see what you do, where should they go?
Yeah, the best place. I've actually got a gift for all of your listeners, John,
Okay.
if it's okay to do a shameless plug. I've got some signed copies of my book, Take Your Shot,
Awesome.
which introduces you to some of the principles that we've discussed on the interview today. If people just want to go to fearless.biz/TYS for Take Your Shot, you can pop your details in there. Wherever you are in the world, I'll sign a copy of the book and then ship it out to you. And hopefully that will start the conversation off. Failing that, connect with me on LinkedIn, drop me a message and let me know what you enjoyed about this podcast.
That's awesome. I love that. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
We're going to put all the links in the description. Thank you so much for coming on Consulting Leaders. Robin, you're awesome.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure, John.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Principal Podcast. We hope you learned valuable strategies to grow your firm and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.